of what was given unto Israel. It is absolutely amazing that our people would see that and still go and test. They saw Moshe. They saw that this man had to wear a veil. He spent so much time in dealing with these holy things that this man began to glow and people couldn't really look upon him. All of these things, and they still test. They test constantly. This is the nature of Israel. So when you deal with the earth going through all of these things, Israel, the so-called African American, has to deal with his part in this also. We were supposed to be the standards for righteousness, but we decided not to do righteousness. We decided not to walk in those paths. And that is why all of these things have actually come upon the earth. The heathens, they didn't know righteousness. We were Yahweh's representations of righteousness on this earth. And this is where it says that the children of Israel has blasphemed my holy name. We blasphemed his name when those people knew we was Israelites, and they look and they see the mess that we off into. Now, we know that there's certain things that they don't understand according to this word. But then there's also other things that we know are great transgressions in this word. And not only do we do it, but we do it with them. Man, if you're going to sin, do it by yourself. Why are you going to take somebody with you? Now, they don't want to deal with the word because they watching what you're doing. Verse 14, in the daytime also he led them with a cloud and all the night with the light of fire. He clave the rocks in the wilderness and gave them drink as out of the great depths. He brought streams also out of the rock and caused waters to run down like rivers. And they sinned yet more against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. And they tempted Elohim in their heart by asking meat for their lust. They had that manna from heaven, which was a foreshadowing of Yahshua, that bread from heaven, but they didn't want that bread. Just like they didn't want the bread of Yahshua. Didn't they have him killed? Okay. Their lust didn't want that bread either. Verse 19, yea, they spake against Elohim. They said, can Elohim furnish a table in the wilderness? Behold, he smote the rock that the waters gushed out and the streams overflowed. Can he give bread also? Can he provide flesh for his people? Therefore Yahweh heard this and was angry. So a fire was kindled against Jacob, and anger also came up against Israel, because they believed not in Elohim and trusted not in his salvation, though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, and had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them of the corn of heaven. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Angels' food. You know, but we're talking about manna, holy things, right? We didn't want that. We didn't want holy things. And we showed that we didn't want no holy things the way they dealt with Yahshua. And the same thing when you go into to certain situations and speak the holiness of what's written in this book, you'll find that they're going to reject you just like they rejected the bread from heaven both times. Verse 26, he caused an east wind to blow into heaven. By his power, he brought in the south wind. He rained flesh also upon them as dust, and feathered fowls like as the sand of the sea. And he let it fall in the midst of their camp, round about their habitations. So they did eat and were filled, for he gave them their own desire. They were in that, brother, that's one of the things that they teach. I heard you say, but the angels do eat. One of the brothers did a cook for the angels. Wasn't that when they was coming to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah? He cooked for the angels. The angels ate. Verse 30. They were not estranged from their lust, but while their meat was yet in their mouths, the wrath of Elohim came upon them and slew the fattest of them and smote down the chosen men of Israel. More keep popping up in my head. Even Yahshua, after his resurrection, he still ate. He had no blood, but he ate. Verse 32. For all this they sinned still and believed not for his wondrous works. Therefore their days did he consume in vanity and their years in trouble. When they slew them, then they sought him, and they returned and inquired early after Elohim. And they remembered that Elohim was their rock, and the high Elohim their redeemer. Nevertheless, they did flatter him with their mouth, and they lied unto him with their tongues. For there was not right with him, for their heart was not right with him. Neither were they steadfast in his covenant. So they offered him lip service, but Yahweh is a spirit, and you must worship him in truth and in spirit. If your heart is not right, he know it. But he, being full of compassion, forgave their iniquity, which is lawlessness, and destroyed them not. Yea, many a time turned he his anger away, and did not stir up all his wrath. For he remembered that they were but flesh, a wind that passes away and comes not again. How oft did they provoke him in the wilderness, and grieve him in the desert? Yea, they turned back and tempted Elohim, and limited the Holy One of Israel. So we can actually limit the Holy One of Israel by our unbelief and actions. This is why before Yahshua would do those miracles, he would often ask, do you believe that I can do this? You can limit him. Verse 42, they remembered not his hand, nor the day when he delivered them from the enemy, how he had wrought his signs in Egypt and his wonders in the field of Zoan. And he had turned their rivers into blood and their floods that they could not drink. He sent divers sorts of flies among them, which devoured them, and frogs which destroyed them. He gave also their increase unto the caterpillar, and their labor unto the locust. He destroyed their vines with the hail, and their sycamore trees with frost. All weather-related things. He gave up their cattle also to the hail, and their flocks to hot thunderbolts. It's hard for people to imagine that fire can shoot down from heaven, but if when that lightning should come out, that is some serious electrical energy. And if it hit one of them trees, there you go. And if it's a dry situation, that thunderbolt can very much have a raging fire in little or no time. He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath, indignation, and trouble by sending evil angels among them. Evil angels. He made a way to his anger. He spared not their soul from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence, and smote all the firstborn in Egypt, and the chief of their strength in the tabernacles of Ham. Remember what we were talking about Job, brother you had mentioned, the firstborn? This was something serious when he smote their firstborn. That was not just a small thing, okay? When you smote a man's firstborn, that is a serious, serious offense. Go ahead, brother.
A good point here is, there's brothers out here who got this thing twisted about us being Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
Right there clearly tells you that they're Ham. It was in the tabernacle of Ham.
Right.
So it clearly lets you know who the Egyptians are.
Right. I just looked at a documentary where they were doing all this thing, and one of the lies was that Ham was cursed. And one part they say Ham was cursed black, and then another one they said this is one of the things that they actually used to verify slavery, but not understand that we're Shemites, not Hamites. So that don't even fit. Ham was the ones that sold us into slavery. And if you go in Joel chapter 3, he'll say woe into you. He doesn't necessarily say Africans. It says Tyre and Sidon, and you look that up and you'll find out that those are Africans. And it says, for you have sold my children unto the Grecians, unto the Greeks. And we know that it was the Gentiles that had us as slaves, and it was the Africans that sold us. So this whole thing, we into this whole African thing. And that is what was being displayed there. Oh, we have to go back to Mother Africa. See, people don't want to talk about the slavery thing. So they don't want to deal with the fact that, because we have that pride of saying, we're strong, we're physically strong, we're this, we're that, right? But to deal with slavery, we have to admit our vulnerableness of how were these people able to overpower us? How were these people able to dominate us? We're stronger physically than these people. How were these people able to dominate us? Because Yahweh took our power. Because Yahweh punished us. How do you think we'll be able to overcome those things? Because he's going to give us our power back after the punishment is over. That's how.
Like come out of timeout.
Exactly.
Timeout over 4 years.
Exactly. But it was 400 years to us. It was a couple of hours to him. It ain't no different than the little child sitting over there crying, talking about they dying from this punishment over here. And you ain't did nothing but put them in the corner. But it hurt their heart so bad. When you have this much attention span, 4 hours in a corner, brother, that seemed like forever.
Time is relative.
You know what I'm saying? Right.
A couple years, a year of that 2 years you lived is like eternity.
Right. So that is the situation when you deal with Yahweh's punishment of us. It seems like forever to us, but it's really just a couple of hours of punishment. Verse 52. But made his own people to go forth like sheep, and guided them in the wilderness like a flock. And he led them on safely, so that they feared not, but the sea overwhelmed their enemies. And he brought them to the border of his sanctuary, even to his mountain, which his right hand had purchased. He cast out the heathen also before them, and divided them in inheritance by line, and made the tribes of Israel to dwell in their tents. Yet they tempted and provoked the Most High Elohim, and kept not his testimonies, but turned back and dealt unfaithfully like their fathers. They were turned aside like a deceitful bow. For they provoked him to anger with their high places, and moved him to jealousy with their graven images. When Elohim heard this, he was angry, and greatly abhorred Israel, so that he forsook the tabernacle of Shiloh, the tent which he placed among them, and delivered his strength into captivity. He delivered his strength into captivity. See, remember, Lucifer couldn't do anything to Job until that hedge was removed. Who you think removed the hedge around us? Yahweh did. This is why people were able to enslave us. This is why people were able to make a big, strong man shine his shoes, because Yahweh removed our strength. And if we stay steadfast in his word, Yahweh is the one that's going to give it back to us. Man didn't take it, so man can't give it. And delivered his strength into captivity, and his glory into the enemy's hands. Verse 62. He gave his people over also unto the sword, and was angry with his inheritance. The fire consumed their young men, and their maidens were not given to marriage. Their priests fell by the sword, and their widows made no lamentation. Then Yahweh awaked as one out of sleep, and like a mighty man that shouts by reason of wine. And he smote his enemies in the hinder parts. He put them to a perpetual reproach. Moreover, he refused the tabernacle of Joseph, and chose not the tribe of Ephraim, but chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Sion, which he loved. And he built his sanctuary like high palaces, like the earth which he have established forever. He chose Dawid also his servant, and took him from the sheepfolds. From following the ewes, great with young, he brought him to feed Jacob his people, and Israel his inheritance. So he fed them according to the integrity of his heart, and guided them by the skillfulness of his hands. When Yahweh spoke the world's